Hey everyone, Spot of Nerd here. Gonna do things a little differently, as you can tell from the way we're videoing this, recording this. If you are listening to this through podcast, essentially what I'm doing is we're going to be talking about Netflix's latest film, All Quiet on the Western Front. I don't know how clear this might be, but this is a very, very graphic film, and it depicts a lot of true events that occurred during the First World War. So, just a heads up if you're visually watching this. Otherwise, if you're listening, I hope you can kind of get where I'm going and understand the feelings and passions, I guess, behind this review. I'm not going to put very many edits, as I've been doing lately with the podcast. It's actually been a little bit refreshing to not have to do so much editing, but I hope you enjoy kind of what I'm going to be discussing here, because there's nothing to enjoy about war and about the horrificness that has occurred in our past and unfortunately still holds true to today. I've even got my tablet, which I wrote down some notes because right out of the gate, by full transparency, if you saw my latest Instagram post, this movie genuinely now ranks in my top 5 most favorite films of all time. And the reason for that is the realism, the historical accuracy, the as non-apologetic as I have been lately, there is no political bullshit or woke aspect to this film. It is simply portraying the story during World War One about a group of young guys who, back then it was, I want to serve my country and I want to become a soldier and fight for the homeland. And in reality, it turns out to be a nightmare, an absolute horrific, horrific nightmare. And so many things, that's going through my brain watching this film. It's, again, there's just you're just speechless, and that's why I have my notes here. But it is better, hands down. It is better than Saving Private Ryan. That's not to say that Saving Private Ryan was not a good film. I think Spielberg did a fantastic job, but I think what gives this the level up over Saving Private Ryan is, again, it's that realism factor. Saving Private Ryan was a good story revolving around, they have to find this guy whose family, all of his brothers have died except him. So of course, to continue on, if the family wants to continue on, they need to find him and rescue him and send him home. Back when the movie came out, Saving Private Ryan, there were a lot of articles and reports, like that generation, the World War II generation, genuinely had PTSD seeing the film, especially that beginning, that opening sequence when they're on Omaha Beach, because it just brought back the horrific memories of that day and that time period, to be frank. But coming back to this, All Quiet on the Western Front, again, it really is that realism factor of what war is. It's not just soldiers on the front lines shooting guns, killing the bad guys, but it's the nurses and the doctors that are in the trenches, no pun intended, with World War One, that are amputating guys' legs and arms in a field, in a hole, in the mud, wherever they can, because this is the early 1900s. This is 1914 through 1918, I believe it was. And there was no sterile operating rooms, there was no painkillers, there was no anesthesia. This was, we either try to help you now or you die. And again, it's just, I'm going to be repeating myself probably, so you have to bear with me. So I apologize on that. I might do kind of the recycling bit, but I think you'll get where I'm kind of going with it. What I'm really trying to admire about this film is the historical accuracy behind it. If you've read your history books, World War I was horrible. It was tragic, gross, everything in between. Nearly 17 million people died during this war. Nearly 5 years. 17 million. And a lot of it came down to just unnecessary death. And I think, again, that's what's really amazingly portrayed in this film, because you have soldiers who are defending their country, defending their homeland, all because of a stuck-up, overweight general that thinks you should go down with glory. And that is the dumbest shit on the planet. And I think, if anything, that's almost what made me kind of angry watching this film, is because even to this day, with the Ukraine and Russia aspects, it's these soldiers, they're going into battle because some politician is sitting in an office somewhere and saying, that's what I want, now go get it. And it makes me angry because they show this in the film, especially near the end of the war. This is what's really good, again, with the film. I'm saying again too much. I'm sorry. I will try to be better at that. They show the progression of the war from before it starts to it starting, the horribleness of it, and then, of course, the ending. Even when there was a ceasefire, and everything is accurate, what's portrayed in the film, the history books, even when there was a ceasefire, the Germans still fought because they thought you should fight to the very end, to the very last minute. And the story is actually, I should kind of actually remind you too, going back a little bit, the story is actually from the perspective of the German side. This isn't from the American side. This is actually a group of Germans, kids, and of course their journey into the battling and the nightmares of war, so on and so forth. But it's these decisions that are made from these higher up people, these generals, these admirals, I don't know what there's a word for it other than just politicians, that basically are sending these kids to their deaths. These kids are not more than 18 years old, 19 years old. They are being sent to their death because of some conquering quest, some manifestation of, I deserve that land. This country deserves XYZ, we could go down a rabbit hole with that throughout even just modern history, when it comes to oil, when it comes to resources, and things like that. Most of the time wars happen because somebody else wants what you have. That's how I see war. It's not a case of, you're going to war because you just don't like the guy. No, you're going to war because they have something you either want or something you need. And unfortunately, it's the men and women that have to get in the middle to acquire that want or that need, all because of a group of sometimes even less than a dozen people tell you to go do it. So you sign a piece of paper saying that you're going to become a soldier, and you now have to do what this person tells you, that is basically sending you to your death. That's where it just gets me fired up and angry, because it's still, I guess I see it a little bit to this day, but especially back during the World War eras, World War I and World War II, it's just so unnecessary, and so much life was just lost over pointlessness. I don't know if that's a word, because you go back into the history books, a lot of what World War I was it was trench warfare. And for those last few years of the war, I mean, there was no ground being won. One side would gain a few hundred yards, then the other side would take it back. Then they would try again on the offensive, and then the defensive. So it just kept going back and forth. And in the meantime, you just have nothing but death in the middle. And that's where, it wasn't even just the war that was killing people. It was disease, it was starvation, everything you can think of that was killing people for them under the most horrendous conditions. And that is what this movie, I think, really is trying to tell you. Yes, it is telling you that story of a group of kids signing up to be soldiers in the German army. They're seeing what the real war effort looks like. There's bodies everywhere. You could be sent to the front lines, and within 5 minutes, a bullet hits your head and you're done. You're down. You're over. It's gone. But it's also showing even if anything, the advances of warfare, the France, English, Americans, tank warfare. And it's showing just what these machines can do. Now, before you go there, I am pro Second Amendment. I myself have a few pieces of firearms that are safe, protected, secured, in my home. I take many safety classes. I go through many practice sessions. I obey all laws. So, do I believe these machines and pieces of equipment can do harm? I'm not an idiot. Of course they can. It's just, that's one of the biggest parts of this movie too that kind of grips you, is the sheer destruction of a human body. There's one scene, where they're showing you the tanks for the first time, and these tanks are just rolling over people, and they're not turning the camera away. You see this tank literally rolling over human beings in the most horrific way possible. And that's what's so powerful. Some of these scenes in this film, even in the trenches, it's obviously the winter time most of the film, so of course everybody's cold and there's snow on the ground, and these bodies are technically frozen. Some of them are built into these trenches because they just need shelter. It's protection against the fire that's coming from the opponent's side. It's just crazy. And then of course you get to the parts of, again, technology, flamethrowers, where this group of guys that started off, there was like 4 or 5 of them, and sadly they just, one by one, they're dying off. Spoiler, I guess, if you really want to call it that. They're being burned alive because the French army have these flamethrowers, so they get to the trenches. So you have the German army down below in the trenches, and you have the France army up above, and it's metaphorically, it's like the cliche shooting fish in a barrel, but with flamethrowers. And again, they are showing you this on camera. So when you're watching this film, you can't almost look away, because this is what it was like, and it probably is like to this day in modern warfare, whatever that might look like. It's just nuts. It's crazy. So let me look, because there was some other notes I wanted to go over. The reality of it, the realism. Again, if you're listening to this, I'm just kind of grazing over some notes that I had. The sacrifices, though this was through the German perspective, it doesn't matter. Even though, yes, technically, if you want to say the good guys won, Americans, Britain, France, there were casualties both sides. Generations of men were lost during this time because of pointless war efforts to try and dominate the world. I do see the irony being British, as I've mentioned before many times, if you know me. Obviously, the British do not have a good history in some respects. We did, there is that saying back in history, the sun used to never set on the English Empire. I'm fully aware of our background, but I am also still very proud and very passionate to be a part of the British culture. To, I don't know what the right words really to use, but again, I understand our history, but I'm still very proud of the country that we are, because we've done so much more in terms of bettering the world, I think, than we have destroying it. It can be said for any country, and I've always been very passionate, even just here in America. I am extremely pro America. I respect this flag, I respect this country, the rule of law. And I think I really just, if anything, watching this film, that's where that's where I wanted to go. So you have to bear with me, because I have to be careful, as always, with what I want to say without going overboard. You look at back then watching this film, and then you look at today and I guess what we complain about, and we don't appreciate what we have. So many roads I could go down, and if I'm going off of different tangents, I do apologize, but I don't apologize, because again, I want you to watch this film and hopefully get a little bit of perspective as to, you look at today's world and what we complain about, it is such bullshit. Without mentioning where I work, you could probably gather where I work if you don't know already. I have people complain to me about the most stupidest shit on the planet. I can't send a text message. I can't log into my social media app. Woe is me, because I drive this $80,000 Tesla that my phone can't unlock. Like, Jesus fuck, people. Wake up. You are full of absolute crap if that is your priority amongst everything else that is going on in the world. And again, that can be taken so many different ways, I am fully aware. But we don't even blink an eye when we see a homeless person on the street. If they're waving at, I mean, again, I know this is so dumb, and it's not dumb. It's not dumb. But you see a homeless person on the street corner sometimes, and they wave at you. Wave back. For the love of God, wave back. You don't want to give them money? Fine, that's your business. You don't want to give them anything, food, whatever you might have in the car? That's fine too. But that's a human being, and if they wave, for the love of God, wave back, because that person has nothing. Again, can go different directions with that. But I'm talking about when you're complaining about your inability to post on Twitter because some guy now says, truth matters. You have $1,000 phone sitting in a home that's likely heated, with food plentiful around your home, in a bed that you sleep in. And this is today's world. So imagine what it was like back then, when these guys and these gals, I mean, you're losing everything. Not even just your life, but the sons, the daughters that were lost, the children that were lost, the civilians that were lost. Like, history, it just, I don't know. You can tell I'm just not really sure what to say, because there's so many things I want to say, but I know I got to be careful, because I do have my job, and I have things I need to keep with that job, aka medical insurance. So hopefully you can get where I'm going, but just watch this film, because you will hopefully get a perspective that those little triple, what do they call it? Tribulations in life, I guess. Those little things that kind of, sure, might make your day bad. They aren't the worst in the world right now. For those that aren't aware, tell you what, the Ukraine-Russia thing, why don't you go have a look on some news articles or do some research and find out what the body count is now. You'll notice how in the beginning it was all about Ukraine, pray for Ukraine, da-da-da-da-da. And yes, those innocent people, absolutely, you should pray for them. But notice how after a while, when it didn't finish, nobody seemed to care anymore? Yeah, well, first off, it's still happening. Second off, those who are excited and almost, they're like, yeah, we need to have a World War III. Go fuck yourself. Genuinely go fuck yourself. Because human nature is to fight. Human nature is to go to war. And I can't even imagine what today's war would look like in terms of a world war. So I do tell you, not only go watch this film, but also do a little research just to see what's happening casualty wise in Ukraine and Russia right now, because it's not pretty. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people are dead because of this conflict. And this is modern 2022. So when you have a bad day, maybe your dog took a crap on the floor or you forgot to pick something up at Target, just pause for a moment and think, it's not so bad. It's really not so bad. And I want to be very clear. I am just as guilty as the next person. If something happened, for me, I can just give you specifically whenever I have maybe a health problem that's giving me a bit of a worse day than the next, but I'm not in the hospital right now. I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm not bedridden, so on and so forth. I still am able to work. I'm still able to see and hear. And I am grateful for that. And it's something that we need to be more appreciative of as humans, as people. That's, if anything, I've said this many times before, that's what we need to come together to be better people and human beings to one another. We all have different challenges and we all have different viewpoints and opinions and ways of doing things. But we're also in different states of being. Some people, they've lost their legs. Some people have lost their sight, their hearing, whatever it may be. And it doesn't even have anything to do with war or the film or anything like that. But what I'm getting, my point is, when it comes to the way the world is today and going to this film, we keep repeating the same mistakes. Obviously, there was a World War One. There was a World War Two not more than a decade or two later after World War One. And now people are excited about the prospect of a World War Three. And it's mind-boggling, the stupidity of these people, or the stupidity that we are continuing to blindly follow what this evil media and social media continues to spray division and negativity and fear across the board. So I encourage you to stop, to wake up and realize just what is happening, and to realize the sooner we can come together, the sooner we can have that peace, and the sooner we can have that camaraderie and happiness that we all deserve, and the love that we all deserve, the almighty that we as human beings deserve to be happy, free, etc., I guess. And again, I'm not dumb to the fact that not everything is peaches and cream. I classify myself as a realist. Many people classify me as a pessimist or a negative person. And frankly, I don't feel that's the case. I just feel I'm telling you things that basically you're thinking of, you're just afraid to say out loud. So, yeah. Hopefully this kind of rambling, I don't really call it rambling, I just getting my viewpoints out, has not offended anybody. Hopefully it's just maybe you agree to a certain level, or you just kind of maybe feel the same. That's why I do these videos and I do these podcasts, is because I think I can maybe have a voice. It's a very small voice right now, but I do feel like this, hopefully by listening to me, maybe you can feel more inclined to talk about it. That's one of the biggest challenges I think we have today, and clearly they had back then during these wars. For the love of God, can we just sit down at a table and talk to each other? Is it really that hard? I mean, come on. Just talk. Talk to me. Talk to you. I'll talk to you. Just be respectful. It's not rocket science. But at the same time, there is the other side of that, especially with today's world. And I've mentioned this before, as I'm looking at my notes just to kind of wrap this episode up. We are living in a time now where we do need to metaphorically, the social media gods, metaphorically As one of my huge fans of idols, Steven Crowder, says, we need to fight like hell right now. Metaphorically. I don't mean literally we need to fight people or do bad things to people. Because the ones that are the loudest right now are the ones that are basically telling the most lies and telling the most bullshit. So it might sound like a bit more of a theme lately, and because I'm actually thinking about pausing for a second, going, yep, my theme lately is fighting like hell with whether I'm reviewing Star Wars or whether I'm reviewing this movie from Netflix, All Quiet on the West Front. You know, I've mentioned this before. I feel very alone in the world. I am very alone in the world. I do not have a huge support system. That Shia LaBeouf interview was perfect, where he mentioned, there's not really anybody cheerleading for me. So when I do these videos and I portray my opinions and my viewpoints related to whatever I'm watching, it's because I do have that passion and excitement of escaping into these worlds. That's with this movie, All Quiet on the Western Front. You are escaping into this time period. You are escaping into what the world was like during a world war in the early 1900s. You are escaping into a battle where there are bodies everywhere and there is horrific, nightmarish actions happening literally right next to you. There are people that dying at your feet that you knew not 10 minutes ago. So when I see things happening today, the media, social media, the news, the COVID situation, we need to stop being quiet. We need to voice the opposition in a respectful way, in a legal, respectful, non-harmful way. But we do not need to be quiet, and we should not be quiet. As you see through these videos and these podcasts that I am doing lately, I am not shy anymore to portray who or what I am, but I also need to be careful because just like everybody else, I have things I need to take care of, and I need to have medical insurance. Like I've said, I know I'm a broken record at this point, but what this movie does, it just hopefully reignites a passion behind humankind can do better. That cliche, what's that cliche where it's like, you don't want history to repeat itself, but yet it still happens. You would think, you think World War II and the Holocaust, you think humankind could never ever do what we did during the Holocaust, and yet humankind did it back in Rwanda. What was it? I think it was Rwanda, in the 80s and the 90s. Again, look it up. Fucking horrible ass shit happened. And even to this day, there is modern day slavery. Look it up. You look at the sex trafficking, you look at all this other stuff. Horrible shit is happening in this very country. And you go to sleep at night without thinking twice about it. But I ask that you maybe start to open your eyes a little bit more to see a little bit more of that truth of what is going on behind closed doors. Yes, there are still many great things happening. There are people waking up to the realities, especially over the last 2 years with COVID. We won't go down that path, but you know my opinion on that respect. There are also people waking up to the fact that, yeah, it is okay to feel proud to be American. It is okay to support this country. God forbid you support the country you live in. That's the country that provides you everything you have, even the ability to bitch about the country you live in. So, again, I won't go down that tangent, but I just will leave you with continue the fight, continue to stand up to your beliefs, and continue to be the better person, I guess is what I'm really getting at. Be the better person. Be the person that changes things for the better for everybody. respectfully, human kindness, love, everything you want to talk about in a positive sense. Be that person. The media might scream the loudest, but usually in a fight, the ones that are screaming the loudest are usually the ones that are most afraid. And they're afraid because they don't have the power that everybody else does. That's why I believe, again, today's world, the ones that are quiet actually are the loudest. Because deep down, if you keep poking a dog, you keep poking him in that shelter, eventually they will bite. Metaphorically, just want to be clear, I'm not provoking any violence or bad things to people. I simply mean that in a respect of, if you keep pushing people, eventually they are going to realize and wake up what is happening in front of them, and they're going to want to take action to hopefully better their situation, however that may look, without violence, without bad things worsening, I guess is what I'm trying to get at without getting into trouble. You know where I'm going with it. So be kind to each other is what I'm trying to say. Be respectful. Love. Treat each other the way you want to be treated. Because I promise you, deep down, it probably will go both ways if that's essentially what we all want. If you get my meaning. So, anyway, if you have made it this far, I sincerely appreciate it. Again, I'm not going to throw too much edits into this. I'll throw a beginning and a end credit thing, but if you're also listening, I sincerely appreciate you coming this far with me. I would love to know if you've seen this film, and I would love to get your feedback, your comments on it as well. Have you watched this film yet? Have you seen it on Netflix? What was your take? Were you blown away by it? Were you like, oh my God, I can't believe what this was all about? Tell me. I want to talk about it, because I think that's really, this movie has just gotten me so passionate and fired up to continue to do what I do. I love history, and I love being proud to be British and proud to be American. And God forbid if we ever do these things again, I guess is where I'm going with that thought. God forbid we ever get to a point of the world being at war with each other. It would just be the biggest mistake ever. Ever, ever, ever. So thank you all. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. Hit the subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Give me a like, comment, the whole 9 yards. Follow me, of course, everywhere you can on the podcast era. We're everywhere, I think now. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. And tell your friends. Share it if you love it. If you don't love it, then thank you anyway for coming this far with me. So until next time, folks, we will see you next time. All right. Later, y'all.